I'm Dave from boyinaband.com, and welcome to day 1 of the 7-day song on Dance Pop, where I'll be going through the process of making 90% of charting music over 7 days. At the end, I'll post the finished song, and you guys can post your completed songs as video responses. Be sure to spend as much time on the outfit you wear in the choreographed dance video as you do on the actual song, or it's not really pop music. This video is sponsored by a company you might know, Propellerhead Software. If you don't recognize it, take a look here. Yeah, they're awesome guys, and thanks to their Music Making Month, I'm able to bring you this tutorial. Link below for more info on Music Making Month, where there's tutorials, interviews with artists, and all kinds of useful stuff to help inspire and educate you about making music with reason and record. Now, my definition of dance pop in this case is the Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, $ha style that's absolutely everywhere. Even if you aren't a fan of pop music, it's one of those genres where it takes a lot of skill to make a small amount of elements sound really big and interesting. The majority of the catchiness comes from the vocals as well, so I'll spend a bit of time over in record 1.5, showing you a bit more in depth how I process the singing on this one. Now, this is the 13th 7-day song, so be sure not to walk under any ladders and be overly suspicious of black cats. So, let's get on with day 1 of the tutorial, where I'll be teaching you how to make a dance pop beat with techniques like tape compression, layering, and the creative use of reverb. Okay, let's begin. Firstly, we're going to change the tempo to around 120, which is not really difficult, though I'm going to go to 125. You tend to find most pop music is around this value, presumably because most pop producers are horrendously rich and busy, and they can't be expected to wax their 17 Ferraris and click the little arrows next to the tempo display. Make a mastering suite, which we're going to bypass just for now. Come back to this later. Then make a mixer 14:2, a combinator, name it beat, and inside it we're going to make an instance of Kong Drum Designer. As per usual, you can do a lot of what I'm about to do with Redrum if you've got an older version of Reason. Just look at any of the older 7-day songs for how to do that, but Kong has some inbuilt filters which save a lot of faffing about with routing individual samples behind the scenes. Okay, I'll just load up a kit now. Okay, I misspelt kit as kid, but I'll try my hardest to avoid any dodgy jokes about children in this one. So if we look at some of the samples we've got, we have 5 that we'll be using in the drum kit. A kick, a hi-hat. Those two are linked together, so we've got separately kick and hi-hat, which is currently muted if I turn it back on. Right there. A nice snare. And 2 claps. Now I've used a bunch of different prime loop sample packs here. Electro House Shocks and The Sound of Bounce are both brilliant for dancey kits. Any decent electro housey or even trancey samples should do the trick. Just make sure they hit really hard. While most of the elements of pop music are quite soft on the ears, the beats are quite the opposite. It's essential to get a hard-hitting beat to drive your track. But not too harsh. You wouldn't want Britney Spears singing catchy pop hooks over some anger fist now, would you? Okay, maybe that would be awesome, but it wouldn't be dance pop. So, let's go through the samples. As you can hear, this kick has tons of power to it, a really weighty dance kick, and a bit of top end, if we take off the filter. However, a nice trick I picked up is to layer a kick with a hat in the choruses, just to give it some more audible presence when everything kicks in. And I've also used a filter, as you saw, just to take off the top end, since it's on low pass, so that when the chorus comes in, I can open it up by just turning off the filter, and just make it feel even brighter in those sections. It's surprising how effective things that you would think are really subtle like this can really lift a section of a song. It's all about creating an atmosphere. Think about it, if you started telling a ghost story to an impressionable child, they wouldn't have nearly as much permanent mental scarring if you begin with a part about the mutilated, reanimated corpses gouging out the eyes of innocent kids, whereas if you lure them into a false sense of security, you'll be sure to mess them up permanently. Sorry, I completely missed the mark on that one. Anyway, the snare is really heavy on the mids, since the claps here will take the highs, and it's got a reasonable length to it as well. Then we've got the first clap, which is all top end. This will usually be layered with the snare, but for a bit of variety we'll be switching up with the layering. You'll soon notice how you can have a lot of variation within a really simple beat to make a track feel more interesting without being too complex for your average listener. And lastly, we've got this excessively dancey clap if I take off the effects. That sounds like it came off an 808 drum machine or something, which I've added a metric ton of reverb to. No imperial measurements here, I'm afraid, my amigos across the pond. So we've got a nice high decay, full size, no damping, a bit less than full width, so it feels a bit more like it's actually part of the percussion. Maybe a bit less than that actually. Then just under half dry wet I think will be better, to be honest. There we go. Now this sound isn't really for hitting hard, only for a bit of extra interest. Now after this you can see I've got this ring modulator here, which gives an awesome tightness to the sound if I play it without the reverb. So before the ring mod, and after, just tightens it up and takes it down a little bit. If we have it with the reverb, a ring modulator multiplies the incoming signal with another signal, in this case a nice little sine wave that's built into the effects device and gives a metallic kind of sound as a general rule. It can be really good for things like synthy bell sounds and basses that make grown men cry, but in this case it just makes for a sweet crisp clap. Now the mix has, if we look here at the level, which I've used to adjust the mix, has the kick nice and loud, the hat is much quieter, and the claps just pretty much left where they were to begin with. You can see that clap actually has the tone taken up as well, just to brighten it up a little bit. And the snare is nice and prominent as well, basically just allowing the bassier sounds to take the fore. Then I've linked the kick and the clap together, as I said, link D, if I link them back up. So when you hit one of them, the other is triggered as well. Makes it nice and convenient. Now, I'll put a beat together in a block called chorus. Okay, so here's our beat. Let's take a listen. Just a conventional 4-on-the-floor kick with a snare on each second and fourth beat. But then the claps alternate to give a bit more motion. As you can see here, we've got a clap there, no clap in the same place in the second bar. And those reverby claps I've just put on every fourth beat. And then right at the end of the fourth bar, I've got the iconic double clap that appears in a ridiculous amount of pop music and gives people an excuse to add it in as a dance move in the music video. So there's our beat. The block will allow us to repeat the chorus section easily, and any changes you decide to make will be reflected in all the chorus blocks, which is really convenient when it comes to arrangement. So now for the processing. If we go back to block so we can actually hear it. Then we're going to simply add right-click, create, Scream 4 distortion unit, take off the cut and body, just on tape mode, which is a nice little tape saturation effect. Bring the damage down, and bring that P1 up. And yeah, I think that's about right. If we have a listen without, so that's obviously louder, but that just feels a little bit more compressed and ties the beat together nicely. You can see down here how much difference it makes to the volume. But you've got to be careful not to judge a sound based on its volume, which is really difficult to do, but you do get a hang of it eventually. And lastly, to bring that volume back up, we're going to create an M-class maximizer. Turn off that limiter and bring that input gain right up. Now you can see it's just about peaking into the red there. So hit the soft clip on, bring that right up. And you can hear, if we take this down a little bit actually, just so it just peaks into the red there. Soft clip is better than a limiter when you use it carefully, since it retains the apparent volume and thus a lot of the punchiness of the drum sounds. So that's the main beat. Join me in part 2 where I'll be layering it up with a loop to get a final bit of high end to fill out those choruses and automating the crap out of the kick drum to bring that hat into the mix.